My name is Eddie Caddy. I am your MC for tonight. My job is to make sure that I keep this boat floating nicely. It is the launch of the Draman Foundation. I'm sure for those of you who are here, you know why you're here. But tonight we want to make sure we reiterate and remind you why it's so important for you to be here, and also so important for you guys to continue to support such an amazing foundation in moving forward. Now, I'm not sure, is there anyone here, if this is your first time in Gambia, please put your hands in the air if it's your first time in Gambia. One or two people. Okay. If you are not from Gambia, put your hands in the air, please. One. Okay, so I'm not alone. That's good. Right, so we have a lot to talk about tonight. We also do have to raise some funds. It is extremely important for this organization, this foundation. But before that, as I know we have a lot to get through throughout the evening, we are certainly here not only to launch a great foundation, but we're also here to have a good time. And I know everyone's nicely dressed in their suits and amazing gowns, but we can relax. I want to make sure we're here to have a good time. You know, as for myself, as I said, I'm not from Gambia. I live in the UK, but from a country called the Democratic Republic of Congo. That's where I'm from. And I believe my country has a table at the back, Kinshasa. The guys at Kinshasa, hello. Right to the back, hello, hello. Yeah, thank you. Look after my country. God bless you. Okay, so before I introduce the next performance, I want to let you guys know once again, and I'm going to be saying this throughout the evening as well, we do have some amazing artwork. I'm sure a lot of you saw this artwork outside during the cocktail hour. And these are some of Draman's favorite artists, of course, from across the continent. And we will be auctioning off the artwork. So if you've seen something that you like, there is an opportunity for you to definitely take it home. But it's going to cost you. Yeah? It's not for free. That's for sure. Okay? So we have another great performance. Let me just check, see if they're ready. Okay, they're definitely ready, guys. So, guys, before I introduce these guys, I just want to let you know one thing. I'm really excited to be here. One of the reasons I'm very excited is because my father never thought I'll make it this far in my career. Okay? No, that's the truth. We have a lot of people here. I'm sure if you're African and proud, make some noise in the building. Make some noise. Yes, 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 yes. And I'm a proud African. But, you know, I went through a stage where my dad made it very clear. When we moved over to London, my dad asked me a question, a very simple one. He said, Eddie, do you know why you are in London? I said, Dad, I don't know. That was your decision. He said, you're here to study, then back to Congo. I said, okay. He said, but I want it to be only 3 things. Doctor, lawyer, or accountant. Wow. I used to love watching football. A problem for me. It was a big problem. So guys, I tried my best. I went through university. I finished, I graduated. But I knew what I wanted to be really. I wanted to be in television. I wanted to do some stand-up comedy. And I remember the first time I said to my father, Dad, I know what I want to be. And my dad said, oh, son, I'm so excited. Tell me who you want to be. I said, Dad, I want to be a comedian. My dad said, say that again. I said, Dad, I want to be a comedian. My dad said, you want to be a comedian? I said, yes, Dad. He said, that must be your first joke. He called the whole family around. He said, come and listen to Eddie's jokes. He said he wants to be a comedian. Eddie, tell your mother joke you just told me. Hey, comedian. Come on, Eddie. Be serious. Guys, I'm going to tell you what happened afterwards. Okay, so before that, I would like to let you guys know I've been here for the past 3 days, and I've seen how hard Nyana and the rest of the guys have been working to make sure you guys have a great experience, and to also make sure you guys leave here understanding why you made this trip. So let's give Nyana and the Draman Foundation an even bigger round of applause. Of course. Oh, she's even getting a standing ovation from Anna there. Come on now. I think it's worth it. Ah, yes, yes. Oh, yes, yes, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, this is wonderful. Oh, I'm getting emotional. I don't want to cry. We're on the internet live. I don't want to cry. Thank you very much, guys. Well appreciated. Well, whilst we're sorting out that situation, I did want to finish off my experience, what I was telling you guys earlier, because maybe some of you guys can relate. We have a lot of parents in the building, of course, And I want to make sure you guys understand that sometimes it's hard. You've been children yourselves, so you understand how hard it is to try and please your parents. It was hard for me, as I said. My dad did not want to hear. I said to him, I want to be a comedian. He didn't want to hear. Can you imagine my parents? My mom was okay, but my father did not speak to me for a whole year. A whole year, just because I wanted to be a comedian. He said, if you wanted to be a comedian, you could have stayed in Congo. And you guys are laughing. Can you imagine how I felt? And of course, I knew this was my purpose. I didn't let that put me off. Guys, I performed for a year. I performed for a whole year. I went up and down the country. My father being a stubborn, as African men, we could be stubborn. My father said, I'm not going to see him. My mother came to see me, she loved it. My siblings, they loved it. My whole family were loving it. I was doing shows just like this, everybody would laugh. And one day, my mom convinced my dad to come. I don't know what she did, but you women are powerful. God bless my mother. So one day, my dad came, and it was an event just like this. And my father was sitting in the middle, just like you are right now, sir. And I could see him. And I did 1 hour on stage. Guys, everybody was laughing. All types of laughter. Everybody was laughing. And my dad, I'm watching my dad, the most important person in my life. And this is what this man was doing whilst everyone's laughing. Like he wanted to fall asleep. This guy kept nodding. I said, what's going on? I tried every joke. My best joke, it came from heaven. My dad did not react. So at the end of the night, I came to him. And I said, Dad, are you okay? He said, I'm fine, Eddie. He started smiling. I said, this is the first time I've seen you smile all night. He said, why? I said, did you not enjoy me? He said, son, you are talented. I laughed inside. I said, what do you mean? He said, I was just too busy counting the money. 20 pounds, 20 pounds, 20 pounds. Oh, I'm your new accountant. We need to sort out our next show. Where are we going next? Oh, yes. My dad has never left me again. Telling you guys, sometimes you just have to go on. Are we feeling good? But we'll keep it moving. I would like to invite someone very, very special for our opening remarks. Please invite the phenomenal Mr. Jonathan Scott in the building. Give him a big round of applause, guys.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. Bonsoir. Bonne noche. So, like most of the people in the room, I've known Draman for many years. Probably like most of you, I was struck by the passion that he had for Africa, the passion that he had for technology, and how to include these two things to make Africa a better place. Tonight, we are happy to inaugurate the Draman Foundation, which will take this passion for new technology and do some good with it. So, as we all know, new technologies are rapidly transforming societies, transforming how we learn, how we deliver social services, and how we do business. Countries in Africa have embraced this opportunity, including Gambia, Senegal, most of the ECOWAS countries. But West Africa must keep up the pace of this change. We need to use science and technology to transform the economies of Africa, and we need to foster digital inclusion to achieve our development goal. We need to embrace technology fully in all parts of West Africa, not only in Lagos, Accra, or Dakar, but for all of our communities, and most importantly, for the youth of Africa, the true future of African development. Embracing technology is a sure way to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Internet access across West Africa has been largely achieved, underpinned by infrastructure improvements, together with a high mobile penetration rate and the availability of affordable technologies, such as smartphones. This has broken the shackles that have restrained West African countries. West Africa now has to emulate the positive, successful initiatives taking place worldwide in other parts of Africa where digitalization has been a catalyst for change. So in Kenya, for example, several organizations work to bridge the digital divide with a coding center in the so-called slum of Kibera. M-Pesa has been the world's leading money service, born and grown in Kenya. Of course, in Senegal, we have Wari, which is doing a fabulous job for West Africa. And even in Somalia, they hardly use any paper currency. Everything is done there using mobile money. This is the future. So this is certainly inspiring for us all, especially for young women and men who believe that technology and innovation are tools for social, economic empowerment. which will ultimately lead to a better life. The Draman Foundation will contribute to make that change possible in West Africa, bringing the technology and innovation that Draman himself wanted for addressing a range of social needs and build economic growth. Inspired by his passion for science and technology, the Draman Foundation will render its software services and expertise of digital technologies to accelerate health, education, and financial inclusion, and will pursue our dream to make Africa a continent of innovation, peace, and development. So I welcome you all to enjoy the night, enjoy the meal, enjoy the fabulous panels that we have coming up, and enjoy the inauguration of the Draman Foundation. Thank you so much.
Please, one more time for Jonathan Scott. Thank you. So I would like to invite Ibrahim. Ibrahim, please come up and join me briefly, sir. Please come up. Let me put this back here. Please come up and join me. Yes, please. Come. Before they open the curtain, Ibrahim, how are you? I'm very good, my brother. The life has been good so far in the last 30 minutes. Yes. Yeah, yes, you look like my father. That's why I'm walking away. I feel like he's here in spirit. You sound like him as well.
To our two countries, and that's why I'm delighted to speak on behalf of Draman tonight. Now, our first session, which Draman could have moderated tonight, it's about the sector that is so important to Draman. It's about healthcare. It's about education. And I don't know how many nights that I spend with Draman. Can you just put the music off, please? There you go, so you can hear me. And I don't know how many nights I spent with Draman in Senegal or in Banjul, talking about the importance of access to education and access to free education and healthcare in our two countries. And that is why it's not a surprise tonight. Our first session, it's about really access to free education and access to free healthcare in the ECOWAS region. But the big question, which is a very provocative question, is it a myth or a reality? Most of you know that in our region, we spend so much money, invest actually a lot of money into our infrastructure, the Senegambian bridge that I took in coming here. We spend so much money into our energy sector, which is very good. We spend a lot of money into our telecommunication, but we don't spend a lot of money into our education as well as into our healthcare sector. That's why tonight we want to pick topics that are extremely important in educating our children, but also making sure we save the lives of so many Africans. Now, I want you to do me a favor. Put your hands together as I invite on stage and distinguished panelists, talented, committed, visionary Africans to join me for what will be an exciting conversation about free access to healthcare and education in the ECOWAS region. Let me call each of them, and I want you to give a big round of applause as I call them. I want to call a daughter of this country who is not only passionate about Senegambia and Gambia and Africa, but has done remarkable stuff on the rest of the continent. So her name is Ole Diba Wada, who is the Director of Human Capital, Skill and Youth. A big round of applause to Ole. Welcome, Ole. Now I want to also call on stage a young Gambian, extremely dynamic. I've dealt with him many times and see his energy, his passion, his drive for this country. And his name, put your hands together, David Chung, who is a young public speaker. David, join us. Now, tonight is also about the ECOWAS region. It's not just about Gambia and Senegal as well. And that is why we have guests that come to us all the way from the beautiful country of Ghana. His name is Honorable Alexander Aban, who is the Deputy Minister of Health of Ghana. Honorable Minister, join us as well. Now, I have not met for a very long time the person I'm about to introduce, but I'm extremely blown away by his passion, his vision, his ambition to turn Africa into a place where access to healthcare is just remarkable. It is accessible to all. His name is Dr. James Snow. Doctor, join us, was a professor at the University of Aberdeen. Now, you may have noticed tonight, we have a very, very strong contingent of Senegambia, because our next guest, who is also happened to be Senegalese and a good friend of mine as well, his name is Mamadou Biteye. Mamadou has just been appointed as the Vice President of Social Impact at Visa, based in Dubai, to join us. Now, we're going to have actually this conversation in the true Draman sense. Pragmatic, concrete, to the point, and make sure we walk away from this conversation with some concrete action. So that means we're going to look at the sector in terms of what, why, and how. What do we need to do to make sure free access to healthcare and education is a reality in our region? Now, Dr. Orley, I'm going to turn over to you because the question is extremely provocative. So free access to healthcare and education in our region, is it a myth or is it a reality? Set the scene for us.
Thank you very much, Mr. John. It depends on who's looking at it and from what perspective. I think free access to education can be a myth and a reality. And I'll tell you why. Now, it could be a myth if we continue to pay lip service to free education. And a lot of countries, would usually talk about free education. It could also be a reality, depending on how much is invested in free education. How much provision is provided for free education, how much budget is allocated to free education. So I think it can be both a myth and a reality, but bottom line is I do not think anything in life is free. For everything that we do in our countries, you have to pay taxes. So if free education is provided in a country, you have to, people pay taxes. So if you're paying taxes to a government and the government provides free education, then naturally, is it free? And who's paying it? So if a rural woman is buying milk or paying income tax or paying value-added tax, and they are providing that contribution and are not taking their children to school, and the country is providing free access to education, then that means they are paying school fees or contributing for somebody else's child.
Right.
So, like I said, it depends on how you look at it and from what perspective.
Now, Ali, let me push you a little bit because I know you work for the African Development Bank. You're looking at the continent as a whole. If we focus on making it a reality, what exactly is the African Development Bank doing in making sure that access to education and health care on the continent is actually free? What exactly is your bank doing?
In the African Development Bank, we've realized that there's so many actors providing support and access to education. One key area that we realize that there isn't a lot of investment is on higher education, on technical vocational skills, on science, technology, and innovation, and on STEM. And because naturally it's expensive. So the African Development Bank has decided that we will focus on higher education, on skills, and on TVET. And in doing so, the bank has now wants to set up a fund, an African Education Fund. This fund would be a fund that would provide education for Africans, that would be managed by Africans, that an education system that resonates within the African system. So it would be an education for Africans by Africans. And this is a fund that would stay within the continent, but providing not just education, but quality education. So that's one key component, looking at higher education, skills, TVET, and STEM.
Right. Now, Honorable Minister, we're going to move away from this continental perspective and try to focus on your country and a country perspective like Ghana. I'm almost tempted to think your answer will be it's a reality, not a myth. So if you focus actually on the reality in the case of Ghana, what are some of the challenges that you face with as a country and making sure that free access to education and to healthcare is actually continues to be a reality in Ghana?
Thank you very much. Let me approach the question with the conviction that if we put our hands to it, access to education, access to health, is not a myth, it's a reality. And that we must strive for it. And I'm going to explain to you why. In the first place, we must understand that education and health are not free in themselves. But when we pool our resources together,
Minister, can we use the technical MC? Shh. So we can have a conversation. All right, go ahead.
when we put our resources together, we should be able to achieve these two imperatives in our lives. And I can assure you that when we are able to do that, the sky will be the limit for Africa. Now, in the case of Ghana, if you look at Article 25 of our Constitution, it states clearly that there must be free, basic, universal education for everybody. And that you stand at a risk of even being punished if you do not put your child in school.
Right.
Now, the same Constitution provides that secondary education in all its forms should be made progressively free. Mm-hmm. But the question is, at what pace? And by what measure?
Right.
And by whose standard? Mm-hmm. So, the current government, immediately upon coming into office, decided that it would not create that feet-dragging situation where the haves would have the best of education and leave behind those who do not have it. And for your benefit, I am one of those whose parents did not have it at all. But I sit here and talk to you as a deputy minister for health,
Right.
giving the indication that if the space is created for everybody, we can achieve that. And so in Ghana now, when we are talking about basic education, we have extended it to include secondary school education. So we now have free secondary school education.
Right.
And like I said, it is not free because it has to do with the taxpayers' money and then identifying the proper priorities like health and education, pushing the resources there to make sure that we reproduce a well-grounded, well-groomed people who can reproduce itself and move the country forward.
Right.
I don't know if you want me to go on, because
Well,
I have many to say.
I'm going to ask you another question because I want to understand a bit more about the case of Ghana. Because I know in addition to not only working toward a free education, free healthcare, you're actually innovating using technology. So the innovation is always part of your plan. Talk to us a bit about the innovation. What exactly are you doing to bring in technology into the conversation?
Thank you very much. I believe that it is this point that all the people who share in the vision of Draman would praise Ghana for. Because I believe that even though we did not have interactions with him, our thinking matches straight with his. So in the case of healthcare, as it is now, it has been rolled out in such a way that wherever you move from to another place, we can assess your health history so that the doctors do not make mistakes. Because, for instance, if you have gone to one hospital and you have been diagnosed of something, and then certain medication has been prescribed, for instance, the other doctor who does not know, you get to his place, he will be able to trace the history of your health care and all the medications so that it will be a one continuous kind of healthcare delivery.
Right.
That is one. In the case of the move towards free healthcare or free access to healthcare, in the year 2003, Ghana enacted a law, what you call a National Health Insurance Act, where it made it mandatory that we spend some money on VAT, so that is 2.5% VAT, and push it into healthcare. And we have graduated to a point where the citizens, not necessarily the citizens, the residents, because it has to do with everybody who is in Ghana. The residents can now, using or following the thinking of Draman, can now use their mobile phones to renew their national health insurance.
Excellent. I'm sure the Draman Foundation is paying attention to what you say, because our intention is to replicate some of the success stories in some African countries and other parts of Africa as well. Now, James, you bring in a different perspective. You are, in one part, a professor, but also a private sector with regard to the healthcare sector. So my question to you from a private sector perspective, myth or reality? And if it's a reality, what are some of the challenges we have to face to bring more private sector into the healthcare sector?
For me, I'll be a little bit controversial.
Yes, go ahead. We love controversy.
In the sense that I don't believe healthcare can be free anywhere in the world. And I tell you why. I'm not going against what you've just said. I think what you said has a lot of merit and there's a lot of truth in it. However, the question is, if you look at healthcare, globally, healthcare costs money. If you want quality healthcare, somebody somewhere has to pay for it. That's the point. I think the issue, when we say free, the citizens think they don't have to pay, the government has to pay, or somebody else has to pay. But the bottom line is, from my perspective, it's a myth, right? Because we can talk about the realities of healthcare today, and that is our public health system has failed, right? Traditional public health systems do not work in low-income countries. They don't work, okay? The next reality is that aid that is geared to healthcare in sub-Saharan Africa has failed, right? Because it encourages dependence and it stifles innovation, all right? So I think what we're all talking about, and why I'm saying I'm not disagreeing, is we're talking about universal health coverage, right? That means, firstly, quality of care should be available to everybody at the point of need wherever you are. Secondly, you should be protected from financial hardship for sourcing that health care. And thirdly, it should be available universally for everybody, okay? We've got a long way to go, right? A long way to go. But I would like us to perhaps start a different conversation that doesn't include the word free, because somebody has to pay, and it's expensive. And healthcare is like a cartel, right? The pharmaceutical industry, there are so many other stakeholders, and we in medicine must be brave enough to stand up to say healthcare should be a lot cheaper than it is today if it wasn't for the cartels. That's the point.
Right. But James, I wanted to keep the microphone a little bit because I have a follow-up question for you. And that is that you're not just talking about it, you're actually doing something about it. And I know that you've been trying to bring in private sector participation in the healthcare sector in the Gambia. Talk to us about that. What are some of the challenges you face with?
I think having worked in the public health system charitably for about 8 years or 10 years, I realized that for every trip we come to, in the Gambia specifically, that when we come back, the system is still as bad as it was when we left the last time, right? No matter what we do as a charitable activity, there was no difference that we could feel. And in my view, the reason was that actually we were all waiting in a lot of ways, firstly for our governments to do more, which they were not. We were also waiting for more charity, which in my view was unacceptable, because it's not sustainable. So for sustainability, we need the private sector. Everywhere in the world, in the first world, the private sector participates in healthcare, right? The key is, in sub-Saharan Africa, where there are so many poor people, What is the model that we can use to give quality health care to you and I that can pay, but to not disadvantage the poor by giving them substandard health care, right? So we needed a model that included both private sector, public sector, government,
Right.
philanthropy, and academia. When I say academia, data, which links us to why we're here in terms of Draman. Because there are many women, let me focus on women for a second, and I'm taking liberties for a moment. There are many women dying in Africa today. For every minute we sit here, a woman dies in Africa during pregnancy and childbirth. For every 3 minutes, one of those women bleeds to death.
Right.
They're not even a statistic sometimes. They're not even a statistic sometimes.
All right, so James and David, let me turn over to you because I know you're extremely passionate about entrepreneurship. So my question to you, as somebody who's passionate about entrepreneurship, how do you see the role of entrepreneurship into the healthcare sector, as well as also in the education sector, to make sure not only it's affordable, accessible, but you can also make money as well?
Yeah.
Talk to me about entrepreneurship.
Yeah, thank you so much. I believe that the missing piece in the healthcare sector will be entrepreneurship. And we're looking at innovative solutions. And when you look at innovative solutions, this can only be driven through entrepreneurship. So how can we really help and harness the entrepreneurship that is being driven by young people? I'll take, for example, in South Africa, I have a friend of mine that have used nanotechnology to cure cancer. Now, we are not leveraging on the innovation that has been generated from the young people. If you look at education and healthcare, access is not about free, but quality free. Can we really have quality? This is the point. Now, how can we leverage on technology to teach our young people, to teach the next generation of leaders and entrepreneurs using a tablet? In the Gambia, for example, there are some students that learn through a tablet. So how can we really create environment? Now, we talk of also the entrepreneurs. Half of the world's wealth is controlled by entrepreneurs. How can our government encourage entrepreneurs to invest in education and health? Now, it's investment because entrepreneurs control the wealth. They have the wealth that the government wants, and they also want something from government. How can government trade? Government should trade with these entrepreneurs to encourage them to invest in education, but innovative education, education that would create skills and jobs.
Right.
I know my teacher will be angry with me if I mention that, we need to do a paradigm shift when it comes to education, because the education we have, yes, is driven results, but is it really creating the jobs that we need? Is it really giving us the innovation that we want? So our education system should be more innovative to be able to create jobs, results, and impact for all of us.
But David, let's be extremely pragmatic. Let's go back to entrepreneurship. The reason why the entrepreneurs are not going into the social sector is it an issue about access to capital, access to market? Is it a capacity issues? What exactly needs to happen in the case of Gambia so we can get more entrepreneurs going to these sectors?
Well, we know that it's not access to market because the market is already here. People are not educated. People are sick. We also have a leverage of about 900 million across the West African countries, which is the population of West Africa. So the market is there. I believe that the policies should be really generated towards helping private sector to come. The private sector should be enticed. These are people who control wealth and they want to invest to get a return.
Right.
So we should encourage them to put in the investment, build the right skills, and together we generate the results that we want.
Excellent. Mr. Bitte, let me turn over to you because you bring in an interesting perspective, and that is you are the Vice President of Social Impact at Visa, which is obviously interested in making money. So my question to you, how do you actually work for a company like Visa that cares about the bottom line, but at the same time get involved in sectors like the healthcare sector, as well as education, where social impact sometimes is more important than actually making money? How do you reconcile the two?
Thank you very much, Sheikh, and good evening, everyone. But before I address your question, I would like to take this opportunity to say that, to express my gratitude to Nyanya for having invited me to be part of this very important event. I must say that I'm truly, truly proud to be associated with this kind of thinking. When I saw the video that brings the background of all of this and where the Draman Foundation is looking at investing its efforts in the beginning, in the future. For someone who has led one of the oldest foundations in the world, a 106 years old foundation, which is the Rockefeller Foundation, which I led for 6 years here in Africa, a foundation that is at the cutting edge of technology and innovation in many social sectors. I must say that actually the thinking of Draman was ahead of its time. I didn't know the man, but what I've heard and what I've seen convinces me that it's through leveraging knowledge, innovation, science, that we can address those questions. I also want to address the first questions that you asked. Is it myth or reality? I don't know even if we should be talking about free education or healthcare. I don't know even if that is where the question should begin. I think the question is about what kind of human capital do we need in Africa, to develop our continent, to be able to create wealth and improve the well-being of our people. And that brings education, that brings healthcare, that brings also many other services that people need. Having said that, then the question is, do we really want it all to be free? So the question is, what is the part of education do we want that should be free? Are we talking about primary education? Are we talking about secondary or tertiary? And what type of education should we have? So all of those are questions that we need to look at. But I must say that actually, to your point, I don't see that as being free. I think that focus should be on really ensuring that we have the fundamentals that would allow actually universal access to those services. Some would be free, others would be paying, and some will be even very expensive. It depends on really what type of human capital we need. Now, having said that, so my experience shows me as well that everything that we get free may not be scalable and may not be sustainable. I have been in the social sector and development sector for over 25 years. I've seen so many good projects, so many innovative projects that you visit a few years later and they haven't served more than a village or of a couple of people. Some of them, even you come a few years back when the support stops and you find that the impact has gone, has died. So I believe and I know that market-based solutions are not the panacea, and not everything should be solved through market-based solutions. But I'm one of those who believe that for those solutions that actually could work and scale and reach people, somebody should have an interest to invest in it. So those should be market-based solutions. And that's where actually for me, companies like Visa and others, the private sector in general, comes in. That's where also they can work with foundations like Draman Foundation and others. Because private sector also has to maximize shareholder benefits. So you have to look at quarterly earnings. When you look at governments, for instance, governments have so many demand and very little budget. So they cannot take certain risks because they have to make what we call arbitrage, all the time. So that's where philanthropic capital comes in to actually de-risk, provide a proof of concept of what are the kind of services that can be actually relevant, provide the expected outcome, make sure that these are working, and if invested in, can scale and can provide the kind of impact that we want. So that's where the partnership with private sector becomes critical to be able to address those questions you've mentioned at the kind of scale and impact that we want.
And since sharing is caring, I'm going to borrow your microphone as they fix mine. Can I ask you to give a big round of applause to our panel speakers? Before I actually go back to them and ask each of them to give me a big statement about what the Draman Foundation ought to be doing and making sure we actually contribute to free access to education and healthcare, do we have any one or two questions from the audience? One burning question. Let me come over to you and leave my microphone. Hold on, I'm coming.
Good evening. So I have a question for the gentleman from Ghana. One of the things that you were talking about is the free education on the secondary level. So what are you doing about the basic level education? Because I will think that before you get to the secondary level, dealing with the African continent, you know, we all know that the basic is actually more fundamental and more important. That builds the foundation. So if you don't have the foundation on it, you couldn't go to the secondary level. So why is it not focused on the basic instead of the secondary level?
Right.
And my second question, and I have for the gentleman from Gambia.
We'll be tight on time, so go ahead quickly.
Yeah, that's the question for you. The free healthcare, right? So in the situation of the Gambia right now, I'm thinking, how do we do this in a controlled environment? Because I think our healthcare here in the Gambia, I've actually experienced it in both kind of ways. We don't have a controlled environment here. So if we go privatized, how do we see ourselves? And if you go private, you're looking for profits.
Right.
How do you control pricing on that case? Okay?
Excellent. If we get another question from the audience, if we go back here, can I get the microphone? If you can just keep it short so we can go back.
Very short. My question is to everybody.
Right.
Do we have the mindset for technology takeoff in Africa?
All right, that's a very short question and to the point. Another question? No, 1, 2 going, 3 going, no more questions. Let me go back to our panel member. Honorable Minister, let me turn over to you. Basic education, basic healthcare, what do you think?
Thank you very much. I think that in my submission, I made it clear that the constitutional imperative was that we should have free, compulsory, universal basic education. So in Ghana, it is called FCUBE. And so since the Fourth Republic, basic education as the foundation of the education ladder has always been free. And I said that the same Article 25 stated that secondary education in all its forms must be made progressively free. And so it had to do with gradual introduction of free secondary school education. But the question is, who must benefit first? If somebody must benefit first, the age of the person who has not benefited is also actually going. And so if we are going to introduce it, it must be at a go. So in terms of basic education, it has always been free under the Fourth Republic.
Right.
It is the secondary education that we introduced free secondary education in 2017.
Right.
So that is what it is.
Excellent. And James, the question about, in the case of the Gambia, private sector involvement, controlling prices, how do you handle all that?
Well, I mean, I think clearly in low-income countries, the only solution that is valid as of now is a social enterprise structure where the overarching body is a commercial company. It's a commercial company that is majority owned by a charitable trust, right? So they all align transparently by shareholding. So the rules are clear. These are business principles used for social impact, right? And by doing so, with good governance, you can ensure charging commercial rates for quality health care for everyone who comes. If you can afford it, you pay. If you cannot, the trust pays for you. But that money never quite leaves the business. It's reinvested by paying for healthcare when profits are paid out, reinvested in the service to allow others to gain healthcare. So I think the social enterprise structure, Ibrahim, is the only solution at the moment in Africa that will allow equitable, quality healthcare for all, poor or rich.
All right, and then Ole, let me turn over to you. The question about, is Africa, from a mindset perspective, is ready to actually go to technology to leapfrog and make sure that this service is accessible?
Thank you, Draman. Before I just respond to that, I think coming from the social sector, there are certain sectors that I believe should be public goods. Education and health should be global public goods and should be the responsibility of governments. I think so. I mean, there are debates in terms of getting the private sector engaged, but I honestly feel that it should be a global public good. That's the first one. The second one is when we're talking about free access to education. I don't think, when the floodgates opened in a lot of West African countries, the quality component wasn't there. So we keep talking about free access to education, but without taking into consideration the qualitative aspect of looking at teacher development, of looking at building the capacities of the human and financial, or taking consideration of human and financial resources to address free education. Free education can be free education, but without the quality aspect, I mean, I'd rather not have it free.
Right.
So that's fun. That's one aspect. Coming back onto the digital component, whether Africa likes it or Africa doesn't like it, whether Africa is ready or Africa is not ready, that ship is sailing. So digitalization of what we do and how we do it is fundamental that we are part of that ship. Because all the resources, the natural resources that are being used for technology are coming from this continent. So we need to build that capacity to ensure that we are part of that. Right. Having said that, it's also important that we note that there are certain infrastructures that we need to take into consideration, like energy, like the digital infrastructure, to be able to be part of that ship sailing. But I think digitalization should be a non-negotiable for Africa today.
Right.
Thank you.
Now, thank you, Ole. I see that the MC and the other moderator are looking at me. We'll wrap it up. So I'm going to turn over to each of you in 30 seconds, really 30 seconds. If you look at the Draman Foundation, starting with you, David, if there's one big, bold, innovative recommendation that you will do to the foundation, should be focused on, what would it be in 30 seconds? Go ahead.
I'll take more than 30. His question was not answered about whether we have the mindset to change. I believe if we don't have a mindset, we can create
David,
the mindset.
That's more than 30 seconds. But go ahead anyway.
We can create the mindset. The next thing is that we have a lot of people in this room, and if you look at Draman, he had a huge social capital, a huge network. So how can we leverage on this network to mentor and empower other young people? That's one thing. The next thing is, how can we really ensure that technology is being used to help our people, especially through girls and women? How can we empower and train the next level of innovators and technology to solve these problems?
Excellent. 30 seconds. That's good. Go ahead, Ollie. What would be one big recommendation?
I would say digital infrastructure, and I would talk about what is happening now in terms of coding, drones, artificial intelligence. I think we need to get more of our children, our youths, to go into technology. I think Draman Foundation needs to, because everything that is happening now is digitalized, be it money or whatever it is. So we need to go digital on everything that we do on education, health, and other sectors.
Excellent. Honorable Minister, one big idea to the foundation.
Thank you very much. What I'm going to say may be a little controversial, but I have to say it as a recommendation to the Draman Foundation. You realize that the intent is to use technology to affect our lives, right? One key area where we have a lot of growth, but we do not have corresponding use of that growth to affect the quality of lives in terms of health and education, is the growth of churches, right? In those days, wherever you had a church planted, you would be sure that they would have a school, and probably they would even have a hospital. Now we have proliferation of churches, and their thinking has always been about the spiritual aspect of the people. So the foundation should look at that area as a conduit to reach to more people.
Excellent. Thank you very much. James, one big idea, one big recommendation to the foundation, what would it be?
Am I allowed to say one word over and over again? Data, 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 data. Can I say it for 30 seconds? I tell you why I say that. Because honestly, people are dying in this country. We all sit here. We think we can catch a plane, go to Dakar, go to London, and be treated. I tell you something. There are many people dying here, and they're not even a statistic, right? And one other thing. You may think you can catch a plane, but the reason why we're here is because if something catastrophic happens, your money means nothing. Zero. We need data to prove that. We need data to prove that we have quality and we've stopped people dying.
Garrett. And last but not least, go ahead, Vitae. What would it be?
I will just put a double finger on that same. And I think that it makes sense to invest and do what you know how to do best, which is really providing that predictive analytics capability through data analytics. And that allows governments to be able to understand where actually resources deployed can make the most impact and achieve the highest ROI. That allows private sector, including medium and small enterprises, to be able to make choices and understand also where they can invest to impact the economy. Again, just putting a double finger
Excellent.
on data. Thank you.
Good. Well, let me see if I remember all the great recommendations that we had. Number one, we have to use technology as a way of actually empowering our girls and our boys across the continent. Number two, the importance of digital infrastructure across the continent. It's extremely important. Number three, let's also reach out to the churches, because wherever they are, they can play a major role in access to education and healthcare. Number four, data is extremely important. It's important we have reliable data across the continent. Last but not least, let's use data to make analysis so we can make the sound policy decision, but also help the private sector. Give them a big round of applause. And that brings us to the end of our first panel. And I would like to call upon the MC to come on stage and take over. I've been counting your money all the time, so you'll be rich by now. And so our panelists, thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Please, a big round of applause for our amazing panel. Okay, so now I want to invite. You actually got your own artwork too. Yeah? Nana, you must come up. You must come up. Don't worry, we're not auctioning you. We're not allowed to do that. You must come up. Please put your hands together for Nyanya. She comes up here. Nyanya D2 Ray, who has put in a lot of work alongside her team and her family. Please, let's keep her going. A big round of applause. Come on, guys.
Thank you so much, Eddie. You've been great. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to every one of you here. It means a lot to me, to our families, and to the Draman Foundation for being present here to witness the official launching of the Draman Foundation. I wish my dad was here, but he is left, but the very few people that are here. So this morning, I asked my son Hassan, how does one say thank you when you have so many people to thank? And he didn't respond, but he also asked me a question. He said, what do you want to thank them for? And I said, well, for just being supportive and being there for us. And he said, that's very easy. I'll help you with that. So he went to write a list for me. Now, before I get to Hassan's list, I just want to share 3 statements that have been very great source of motivation to this event. And the first one is from a German friend of Draman called Patrick. He lives in London. And when Draman passed away, the 19th of March, he called. And he said, tell me what I've heard is not true. Because Draman is one of the only few people I know that finishes off his projects. And he's got so many projects that are outstanding. I wish I could tell him it wasn't true. And the second statement was from my auntie's friend. She was here. She just left not long ago, Auntie Ida. And 2 days after Draman passed away, he was laid to rest here in Banjul. And he came to our house, and he said to me in Wolof, Massa Sumadom, yow de xamuloo luy dee waaye demal nga Google ko. Meaning, sorry, my daughter, you don't know what the meaning of death is. All I can tell you is go and Google it. Well, I can tell you one thing. I never got to Google the word death. But what death has taught me, death has made me a stronger, a smarter, and a kinder person. And death has humbled me more. And the last one, and the most pleasing and motivating one, is from my father. And I wish he was here because I want to dedicate this evening to him. And I'll tell you why. When Draman passed, I used to go to the grave every single day, unfailingly, consistent, for the first 6 months. Sometimes I went with the kids. Most of the times I went on my own. And I went twice at times. So 6 months after Draman passed, my dad came to the house. And my house help said, your dad is here to see you. Normally, my dad doesn't come to see us during the week. It's normally weekends on a Sunday. So this particular Thursday, I'm like, why is he here? So I thought maybe my mom sent him to me because she was very worried. I know there are so many nationalities here, but our Senegambia culture, especially the Muslim culture, if you pass away, you just get remembered in prayers. So my family were very disturbed that I would go to the grave every single day. But my dad proved me wrong. My first thought that I thought he would tell me, stop going to the grave, he didn't do that. He came to tell me it was time to get up. It was time to stop grieving, that I have a responsibility as a widow to Draman, as a mother of our kids. It's my responsibility to make sure that his legacy continues. And I looked at him and I'm thinking, that's what I'm doing. I go to the grave every day and I talk to him. And he said to me, no. And he said to me in Kirio, in Aku, he said to me, you're capable. You're very capable. You're Draman. Draman was just the brains, but you are him. And I want you to get up and I want you to continue all the good work that he has started. And I looked at my dad. He gave me all the convincing words. He said, you're like your dad. You're hardworking. Anybody who sends you to the middle of the ocean, you won't come back empty-handed. And, for the first time, I saw my dad in teary eyes, shaking, saying that no one's death has hurt him like Draman's death because our world has lost a very kind and intelligent person. And to me, that was my source of motivation to get back on my feet. Because my dad did not just only remind me that it's my responsibility, he made it my responsibility. And I dedicate this evening to him for his unconditional love, for his continuous financial support, but our good friend Jerome, and I think he really liked this Spanish woman, and he said to her, we're half Christian and we're half white too. And I was looking at him in a surprise, and he said, yeah, Tonto John and Tata Mez. So thank you so much. And his list continues. Thank you, Tata Fahim and Tonto Mohammed. Thank you, Papa Dakar and Aminata's mom. Thank you, Tata Mandi and Tonto Kamal, Tata Rebecca and Tonto Driz, Tata Ina, Tonto Q-City, I guess that's Mohammed. And Salam's mom, that's Mohammed's wife. Thank you to Tonto Keo, Tonto Have, Tonto Office. I think Tonto Office is Alpha. He's always giving them food in his office. And thank you to Amran's mom and dad, our wonderful neighbors. And William's mom and dad, Menelik's dad, and Tonto LA. That is Draman's childhood friend who lives in LA. But what I want to add to Hassan's list is to thank all of the Draman Foundation board members, the keynote speakers, the moderators, the drama team, the MC, my event planner, our Sherry. She's done a fantastic job to pull this through. I wish we could show you the before and the after event and how we've just ripped this hall entirely upside down. And our travel agents, Orbit and Rumia, our consultants led by Monsei, our sponsors, Staff Foundation, QCell, SCB, AfriCell, Jembe Hotel and team, Coco Ocean and team. I have mentioned, I didn't say, but I come from a very big family. But today, I would like to make a special mention to my sisters, Kinza. Thank you so much for those middle nights. Ina, my development partner. I was pleasantly surprised the way Kinza really understood what Draman's vision was and how she just helped shape the 3 programs that our consultants are working on right now to prepare a framework. Thank you so much, Kinza. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you to Ifal and wife Josephine for flying in, taking time off. Thank you, Mamadou Bete, James Ndao, Ife, Rama, Ibrahim Sheikh Jong, all of you. And I would like to thank Nene. She's left, my cousin, my sister Titi, my brother Abubakar for being my writer. He's the diplomat of the house. And he wrote my first concept note. And thank you to my sister Aisata, my brother Abdullah, my brother Omar, Lamin Manga, my brother-in-law, for doing the voiceover, because the production was done by a French company, but we wanted the African to stay in it, and Lamin did the voiceover and provided the music, so thank you so much for that. My sisters, Yahadi, my friends turned sisters, Ada, Awayama, Yafatu, all of them were here. Thank you all for your moral support, and thank you to all those who pledged. What I want to say tonight is, like to Patrick, to my father, and all of you here, I just want you to know that continuing Draman's legacy and doing all the great work he started is what feeds my soul and fuels my purpose. And I am going to continue doing that through the Draman Foundation. And to my beloved Draman, he never liked it when I said I'm the hustler of the family. I was his Olivia Pope, the fixer. And yes, the kids know. Baba is the inventor of the house and Mama is the fixer. So Draman, I hope today your family and friends have made you proud in heaven. May God continue to bless your soul. May God bless the Draman Foundation. I have listened to all the call for action for the Draman Foundation today, and I couldn't stop thinking of what Draman's call for action would have been. I mean, he was a man of few words, and I think he would have just said, it's time for Africa. So thank you so much to you all for being here. Thank you. I forgot to say, I think you're gonna dance. Because one thing that you both agreed was he was the better dancer. So you gotta show them your moves. Thank you so much.
Pick yourself up and dust yourself off and back in the saddle.
Okay, so before we dance, the final announcement, of course, as stated earlier, the Draman Foundation will obviously take this to different parts of the ECOWAS community. And the next one, I've been told, will be in Senegal.
Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. And my guest in this interview panel is Ian. Welcome and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Ina, you've talked about digital financing in Africa. How is digital financing going to help Africa in terms of its economic growth?
Thank you very much, sir, for this interview and this question. Digital finance is the way of the future for banking and general finance in Africa. The amount of non-banked population that we have, it will be impossible in the next generation to reach all the non-banked population if we want to do it through brick and mortar, through traditional bank expansion. So digital finance is the revolutionary way to get to the unbanked. Digital finance is the revolutionary way to ensure that people have access to credit, access to finance, be able to reach markets that they currently don't have, to bring together the buyers and the sellers. The products are being changed and improved upon to meet the African need. And for that, I am 100% certain that in another 10 years, banking and financial services will look completely different from what it looks now.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Still on our interviews on QTV about the Draman Foundation, we also have a guest with us here. Keo, the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank, Gambia and Senegal. You are also part of this foundation. You came in here. First, I would ask about your impression about the Draman Foundation.
I believe objectives are very noble. The purpose is noble. The plans have been elaborate. The audience has been very robust. The panelists and the sponsors, I think, have done a good job. I believe that with consistency and continuity, we can actually actualize the objectives for which it was set up.
As somebody who works in the banking industry at a senior position, you still have so many Africans who don't have access to banks. What do we do to change the mindset?
Excellent. I think it's twofold. Let's take the first one from cash, and the second one we'll talk about digital solutions. Now, I believe the first thing that we can do is with policy and with regulation, we can incentivize people to actually keep cash in the banks. For them to keep cash in the banks, they must open accounts. So you incentivize them to keep cash in the banks and dissuade them from keeping cash. I know few countries who set up a plan to say that within a year or 2 years, they sensitize the public, they sensitize the financial industry. And they said within a year or 2 years, if you lodge or withdraw above a certain amount of cash, you will be penalized with a certain amount, 1% or 1.5%. Before you knew it, all sorts of different solutions were put in place to prevent people from holding cash because they knew they would suffer a penalty.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in the Gambia, and of course a real pleasure to be at the inaugural of the Draman Foundation. Draman was a good friend of mine. We knew Draman and Nyanya from the time where they lived in Dakar, and we moved there about 3 years back and got to know them pretty well.
Setting up a foundation in remembering the good work that people who pass did, how good is this when it comes to changing lives of people and also making sure that they're remembered in a positive way?
I think it's tremendous. It's tremendous under all circumstances, and particularly so in the case of Draman. Draman was a real intellectual. He was a fount of ideas. He was passionate. He was driven by the way he wanted to contribute both to the Gambia and to the continent in general. He was a real believer in technology, and he just had this way of connecting with people and of bringing them around to his way of thinking and the vision that he had, that I think it's particularly appropriate, and one that's a real source of, it's a real privilege and honor for the rest of us to support, but the manner in which Nyanya has brought this together, I think is a real testament to his memory.
Amadou Biteye, it's a pleasure to have you on this special interview.
Thank you, my pleasure to be here.
First, let's talk about Africa in general. When it comes to digital technology, digital revolution, Africa might make some trends, but comparing it to the other part of the world, let's say the developed world, Africa still needs to do a lot more. What do you think Africa really needs to do to catch up with the rest of the world as far as digital revolution is concerned?
I think that Africa has a great potential. Africa has great minds, innovative people that can actually use and take advantage of digital technology. A lot has happened in Africa over, let's say, the past 15 years. The rise and development of information and telecommunication technology, ICT, has been the most transformative, and its application to different sectors, particularly to financial sector. Today, with M-Pesa, born in Kenya, and which actually is being rolled out across the continent under different brands, has been revolutionary in terms of financial inclusion. We have the potential also to use technology, and particularly digital technology, for agriculture, which is still a very important part of our economies. It's the engine. That's where we have most of the people working. And through health and You know, what is great about ICT technology, digital technology, it's that it is sector agnostic. You can apply it to any sector and get products and impact cheaper, faster, and that's what we are looking at. Actually, they need to look at the power and the potential, the transformative potential that digital technology holds. And they need to understand that and be able to actually devise those strategies that will create the enabling blocks that would allow African and foreign investors actually to invest in this. So that's what I think should happen.
Mamadou, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.